welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and we're going to do something that's actually surprisingly kind of rare on this show. We're going to talk about the Green Party. Although this show is hosted by the New London Greens, usually the topics are pretty wide-ranging, but there's been some shifts in the Connecticut Green Party, and my guests tonight are Baird, Welch, Collins, and Emily Garfinkel, who were recently elected 2 of the 3 co-chairs of the party. And I was elected secretary, so we're like 3/5 of the executive committee. So we thought we'd get together and just talk about the Green Party and what's happening in Connecticut. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I guess maybe it might be interesting to start out to hear from both of you how you found the Green Party and what attracted you to getting involved.
Well, I got involved with the Green Party formally about 3 years ago when we founded the municipal chapter in Waterford. And since then, we've really grown and kind of brought it together. But initially, I think what attracted me to the party was the focus on values, specifically being a value-oriented party, and also kind of the way the party focuses on action as opposed to just statements. I think that was very appealing.
I think for me personally, I first got involved with the Green Party my freshman year of college. I just graduated from UConn, but I did my freshman year at Ithaca College in upstate New York. And while I was there, a good friend of mine, Josh Kelly, who's also co-chair of the Waterford Green Party, he had mentioned to me that he was looking to start this, political activist group on campus. And I always thought, I really want to get involved with a third party because being someone who I knew deep down that I was progressive, I wanted to join a group that I knew was action-based. We did a lot of community outreach. We wanted to form coalitions with groups in the greater Ithaca area and just build relationships and kind of establish ourselves within the university. And then upon graduating from UConn, I wanted to take it more to the state level, so I wanted to get involved here.
And I know you and we were kind of like neighbor parties.
Yes.
Some of the issues in Waterford aren't quite the same as in New London, but I've been a registered Green since 2004, but I've been kind of involved in the party since 2001, which was the first year the New London Greens ran candidates for city council. And you mentioned the values of the party. People who are watching the show will remember that we were embroiled in this Fort Trumbull eminent domain debacle. And the Green Party was the only party at that time that believed in people's property rights, thought that the city should not be taking people's houses for non-public uses, and also reproductive rights, because so many of the property rights people are like very conservative right-wingers who are against reproductive rights. And I thought, wow, can't there be a party that affirms human rights in both spheres?
Consistently libertarian.
Yeah. And it's the Green Party, even more than the Libertarian Party.
Absolutely, yes.
Sometimes people who self-describe as libertarians, I think, are sometimes trying to force their beliefs on others. Not all, but there is that element in the Libertarian Party that it makes it a little less libertarian in some ways than the Greens.
Yes.
So, as newly elected co-chairs of the state party, what do you feel like you can bring from Waterford to the state level that's kind of exciting to you?
Well, in Waterford, we've been very successful because we've focused our energies working from the bottom up. We don't believe that any office or board is too small to work towards getting appointed to or elected. And that's really been kind of our strategy and our focus. It's been on, grassroots, person-to-person, knock-on-the-door campaigning. And that has been very successful for us, both in our municipal elections and in our state elections. We've seen steady, consistent progress And this year in 2017, I expect that quite a few Waterford Greens will win their municipal elections. And that kind of strategy on the local level, focusing on talking to people, addressing local issues, focusing on fundraising and kind of effective person-to-person, growth, that's kind of the strategy that I want to bring to the state party.
Really just to echo what Baird said, well, as you both know, I'm not a Waterford native. I'm actually from Hartford County. I am from Farmington and I currently reside there. What really appealed me to the progress that Southeastern Connecticut has made was I would say, willingness to collaborate with other groups, not being afraid to discuss ideas and even potential candidates with the other major parties. And that is a value that I do want to sort of bring forth in the state party. And even though this is actually my second term as elected co-chair to the State Central Committee, I feel like in the past year I've been kind of placed at a stalemate where I've had these ideas. I say, hey, we're kind of stuck in this space. Yes, people know who we are, but just not quite enough, I'd say. I feel like we have these ambitions, but we're not taking the proper, little steps that we need to get there. And I think that really the basis of that is collaboration.
And I know Waterford's been very strategic in terms of choosing elections to run in that are not popular.
Yes.
And that's a good way to get in.
Exactly.
There are a lot fewer elected positions in New London than in Waterford. So what we Greens have had to do here, we do have Myrna Martinez, of course, who's on the Board of Education, and I served a term as well in the past. But, we encourage people to be on boards and commissions, and unlike our elected positions in New London, there usually is a minority party requirement.
Right.
And, New London's kind of a Democratic monopoly town. The Republican Party really isn't much stronger than the Green Party.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these positions that can't be Democrats, we can get Greens on. So we do have Greens on the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Conservation Commission, the Water Authority, the Senior Citizens.
Right.
So I don't know, everything you do just makes you part of that community.
Well, as you said, one thing we do is we very strategically choose which elections to run candidates in. And the reason why we do that is because we do not believe in running candidates in an election where there is no concrete benefit to the mere fact that they're running. We have run candidates for state representative because we felt that there's real value in gaining ballot access and bringing forth our opinion and our voice into that debate. And on the municipal level, we have run candidates in elections where we feel that those candidates can perform well and potentially win. And that's really the strategy that we've used.
Right, and I think it's also important to sort of pick and choose what battles are sort of worth fighting, especially as a minority party, due to lack of funding, lack of awareness, just the overall obstacles that we have to face that the other major parties don't. So I think it's sort of a matter of, picking and choosing what is important, what is attainable, and like what Baird said, what will really make a difference in your direct community. And I think it's important to start with that at the base level, and then once we sort of establish ourselves from that true grassroots level, which is an important value, then eventually with time we can, work ourselves up from there. But I think it's a matter of ambition and being realistic and practical for now.
And that is an interesting balancing
Yes.
act, being strategic but keeping the values.
Right.
It is, yes.
But I find it actually really fascinating. And I think the attitudes in New London and Waterford are similar in that when we run candidates for an office, we want to feel confident that if elected, no matter how remote the chances, that person would do a really good job in that office.
Exactly.
Yes.
We don't do just symbolic runs.
Absolutely.
The reason why I joined the Green Party in the first place was because I wanted to support candidates and work for candidates that I truly, genuinely believed would do the best possible job. And so it's been central to the opinion of the Waterford Green Party to run candidates that we truly believe, if elected, would serve the best possible way.
Yeah, and that is a value that we have. When we have our nominating conventions, we like to ask them very important questions, ask them what they would want to do and accomplish. And like what Baird said, I think that there's sort of a line between, the symbolic candidates and, ones that would actually be practical and would do a good job as, a quality candidate. Because I think that if we're putting somebody on the ballot line who says, oh, sure, I'll run for it to, help the cause, or, oh, I wouldn't mind taking on this position, but if they don't really have the passion, the drive, the funds that need to be collected, the petitioning that might need to happen, then we're sort of not doing the direct action, which I think is what the Green Party really needs to stand for.
And I think part of it is, and I'm not sure every chapter of the Green Party all over the state or all over the country is like this, but I feel that we're doing this for the good of our communities. Mm-hmm. It's like we don't promote the Green Party for the sake of promoting the Green Party. Right. It's because we have something to offer
Absolutely.
That would be very helpful to our communities. Mm-hmm. And it does differ from community to community, but I think that in Southeast Connecticut, our communities have really benefited from it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've always really appreciated about the Green Party is that the vast majority of Green candidates, they're running and they're choosing to run as a Green, not because they think it will give them a tactical advantage, but because they think that that's the most genuine and honest way to pursue that office. And so with the Green Party, you really see a high collection of people who are genuinely interested in the well-being of their community and not so much the political ambition.
Right, and I think that, it really stems from that, from running from these local boards and commissions that are important. And I think that if people say, okay, well, yes, I acknowledge the Green Party values, this is what I believe in, but this is how I want to implement it, this is how I think it would be relevant and what I can change. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Now we have the country, and the state to a somewhat lesser extent, but I see it here too. I think dissatisfaction with the major parties, the Republicans and Democrats, is the highest in my lifetime.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, certainly.
There are a lot of people who are really unhappy with what's happening at the political level, statewide and nationally. And it seems like it should be an opportunity for minor parties like the Green Party, perhaps like the Libertarian Party as well. So how would you suggest we take advantage of that?
Well, I think that the best way to take advantage of the interest that people have in alternative politics and outsider politics right now is to, number one, run serious candidates in elections that they can practically win, and do so with the understanding that we are working within, as of right now, a two-party system. And that means reaching out to and collaborating with other groups and even other parties that are willing to work with us and on the issues that we have in common. I think that that's really central to being a practical, realistic political party in a two-party system.
Right, and in addition to that, I feel like even just internally at the state level, just the party ourselves, we really need to work on changing the dialogue and how we approach these things, even before the implementation stage of the policy process. I think that there's sort of a split at the state level between sort of the pure idealists versus the ones who say, okay, well, we actually need to get somewhere, to put it lightly. So I think that once we sort of change the sort of the one-sided dialogue within the party, and instead of saying, oh yes, we completely reject the two-party system and we reject people, sometimes there are individuals who would reject people who say, oh, I'm part of this two-party system, but I want to work with you. I think sort of the self-alienation or ostracization of it has been really detrimental to us making much progress. So I think in order to go forward, we really need to, amongst ourselves, just change the political conversation, and that, as co-chairs, is what Baird and I wish to accomplish.
And I think about part of the conversation just has to become a more nuanced, thoughtful conversation.
Absolutely.
And I think New London folks know that when I ran and was elected to the Board of Education, and both times Myrna has run so far, we were cross-endorsed by the city's Republicans, who were looking to have a more complete line and thought, oh, these Greens, at least they won't go along with everything the Democrats want, which is true, though, they haven't totally been happy with everything we've done, in all honesty, and I don't know what the future holds, but it's nuanced. In 2009, when I ran, I was cross-endorsed by the Republicans, and I was elected. 2 years later, I was offered the cross-endorsement, and I declined it because there were other things going on that were more important. So I think just having a black and white stance, every community is different, and even from year to year, each community changes. In 2011, we had a mayoral election. We had a huge referendum of tremendous importance on the potential sale of Riverside Park, and I thought that if I were on the Republican line, which was the same line as the Republican candidate for mayor, whom I like, who's a nice guy, but he was well known to be someone who was in favor of selling Riverside Park. And I thought I couldn't confuse voters by being on that line because saving the park was more important to me than getting on the board. And I guess I got my wish because I was not reelected, but we didn't sell the park.
There you go.
So, things change, and the more you know what's happening in your community, the more you can make smart decisions.
Well, you have to be adaptable and you have to be proactive. That's important for any political party, but especially for the Greens. We have to, be prepared to talk about the issues as they come up, especially local issues like Riverside Park, like some of the issues that we're dealing with in Waterford.
Right, and I think with how diverse Connecticut is, and having people who have stepped forward saying that they've wanted to run for various candidate positions, it's important to take account, where they're coming from, their constituent community, the different organizations that are willing to work with them, because we're so diverse as a state. But I think it's really important to take into account the issues too. I know that many Greens also believe that cross-endorsement is inherently a problematic issue because of the thought that, we're selling out our beliefs. We clearly don't feel, we don't feel what the values are stating because we're willing to negotiate. But as Baird said, it's really a community-based issue. I think that even within that, there's diversity in how we want to interpret them based on that, and I think that we really need to focus on more similarities than differences. Otherwise, it would, further the alienation and make finding viable candidates more, difficult to find.
And we can actually position ourselves in a really great way because of the obstacles against minor parties. We often know how to navigate the system better than people from major parties do. And I'm sometimes shocked when, we had a great candidate for Congress this past year, John Pelto, but he was in the Democratic Party for many years. And it was kind of shocking to him to suddenly become aware of how third-party candidates are discriminated against. I think people within the major parties aren't really that aware of it. And so in New London, when a couple people went to a forum in Mansfield, I think, about banning fracking waste in the community, they came to a Green Party meeting to ask us to help them get it through. So we knew the logistics. We were not spearheading the effort, but it was kind of nice that we have this position in town that people think, oh, I want to get something good environmental done. Let's ask the Greens if they'll help us do it.
It was even interesting when we ran Lauren Shaw for District 38 state representative this past November. It was interesting how because she ran as a Green, she had some interesting cross-endorsements. For example, she was cross-endorsed by the CCDL, which one would not assume to associate with the Green Party.
That did not happen in New London.
It probably won't happen again in Waterford.
But it was interesting because I traveled with her and I helped her canvass when we walked door to door. We talked to some people on the streets of Waterford, and when they said, okay, well, what's your stance on this? Or when she would bring up, I was actually cross-endorsed by the CCDL. It really, it showed, especially Waterford Republicans, oh, okay, so there is somebody who I can share some common ground with who I wouldn't expect. So I think even in her campaign, one of the biggest successes that we had was really opening eyes, saying that there is, sort of a diversity and as far as what opinions are on issues, and it isn't so much, strict party line, you must think this. There's, a breadth in ideology.
Well, there's as many political opinions as there are people.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that the Greens do very well, and is very important, is we present, to people that are used to a black and white two-party system, that there are many shades in between. And I think that a lot of people, they either really like that idea or they find it disturbing, because it's human nature. It's very convenient to want to view yourself as the good guys and they're the bad guys. But I think one advantage the Green Party has is we present the fact that there aren't really good guys and bad guys. They're just people with different political opinions.
Absolutely.
And we happen to represent one of those groups of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the first times I saw the 10 key values, there is a question form of these values. So yes, it's grassroots democracy and nonviolence, but this particular form was, how can we achieve this, or what do we have to balance to do this? And it was very intriguing to me that these were stated values in a way, but they were really presented as the start of the conversation, not the end of it.
Right.
Right.
And when you were talking about Lauren, it sounds so similar to when we had Green candidates in 2001 and 2003 in New London who were as vehemently against eminent domain abuse as any libertarian,
Right.
but also were pro-reproductive rights, pro-ending drug prohibition.
Yeah.
That, it's, to me, it's a very interesting balance. And I guess a lot of us, we all do kind of like all the amendments.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, yeah. I think the Green Party is very politically diverse, certainly as politically diverse as either of the major parties. I don't agree with 100% of what the Green Party stands for. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who did who was in the Green Party, just like I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any Democrat who agreed with 100% of what the Democratic Party stands for. But I think that what I like about the Green Party is that it all comes back to those same 10 central values.
Absolutely.
And so the diversity of opinion falls within these 10 values that we're not willing to change. And that consistency and that clear, strong message for an ideology that promotes peace and well-being, that's really what draws me to the Green Party.
Right, and same goes for me as well. I think what really appealed me is the idea of sustainability, because I think that is sort of what unifies, and it also applies inherently to all of the values. I know a lot of people, when I mention that I'm a Green, or if they ask me about the Green Party, they say, oh, isn't that, that environmental group? And I think they probably confuse me with, Greenpeace or.
Yes,
the
Greenpeace Party.
And I always just respond the same. I say, well, that is a value. That is certainly a part of it, because at the heart of it, we are a party based on sustainability, whether it be social sustainability, economic sustainability, and I think at the root of it all, environmental sustainability is what gets us all there. So that's what I would say is the most important underlying value of all of the 10 key points that bring us together. So,
yeah.
I know I used to say future focus was
same
one
idea.
but it's really the same thing
yeah.
as sustainability. It's like, what kind of world are our kids and our grandkids
Absolutely.
going to inherit? And we have to think about what we're doing now to consider what the lives will be like in 25, 50, 100 years.
And people can take with it what they will. There are many Greens where they say, oh, I'm a die-hard environmentalist. I go and, like there are people who are in the Sea Shepherds. There are people who are, very devoutly vegan, which I think is, it shows that environmental sustainability is very important. And although all of these things are, of course, equally important to me, my real passion is like social justice and feminism. That is the point that I care most about, because I think The power for women, men, or anybody of any gender in between is really, what will keep us going.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I think I remember you said when we very first formed the Waterford Green Party was you said, oh, I never really imagined Waterford to be kind of this hotbed of Green Party activism. But one thing, and when you said that at the time, it kind of gave me pause. I was like, oh, is that true? But in retrospect, I think that where we live geographically, Eastern Connecticut, has a very independent, political feel to
Right.
it. I recently wrote 2 term papers, and both were kind of on the topic of political geography, specifically in New England.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's very consistent about Eastern Connecticut is that people are very open to independent, unaffiliated candidates. If you look at Waterford's elected boards, there's a lot of unaffiliated on there. Certainly a lot more after President Trump was elected. A lot of
Right.
Republicans became unaffiliated.
Right.
Yeah, that is interesting to think about because, and I don't remember saying that, but I can imagine saying that because in New London, the Greens did not really start out as environmentally focused.
Right.
It started out as social justice focused because, city problems.
Right.
And at the time, when we started, most Green Party activity in Connecticut was focused on the cities. There were big problems, in
Yeah.
Willimantic, New London, Hartford, New Haven was where you had the real centers of Green Party activity. Not all of those areas have sustained that level of activity that we have.
Right.
But, you mentioned political geography too, and I think there's something with real geography that there's something weird about Southeast Connecticut, that
Yeah.
we're geologically different from
It
the
is.
rest of the state.
It is different.
Well, New England does stand apart because it has that Puritan town meeting democracy history.
Right.
That's something that we have that the rest of the country doesn't. And that's why our towns are set up the way they are, and I think it's why we have that independent political streak. New England believes very heavily in the political pipeline.
Right.
And because New England believes so heavily in the political pipeline, it seemed natural to us in the Waterford Green Party that if our candidates could get elected to the lowest position and just keep slowly working up from there, that's the best possible way to build a party. And that model, I think that we've stuck to that. It's been very successful, and that's really what we want to bring to the state level.
Right. No, absolutely. And being a not southeastern Connecticut native myself, it is interesting coming here and really seeing a different political climate than even I'm used to. Baird and I usually joke, the difference between Western Connecticut and Eastern Connecticut, how there's really a shift in attitude. Why I'm not so sure, being from Hartford County myself, I would guess it would be just the fact that there's such great wealth dispersion between, of course, Hartford and then, the wealthy suburbs that surround it. So it's kind of hard to say what really stems from that. But to go off of what Baird said, it really, in New England in general, I think that the pipeline process is really at our root, and I think it's what the Green Party really needs to cling to if we want to grow as well.
I know one of the early things that I became aware of that the Waterford Greens did that I thought, oh yeah, that's basically a similar attitude to New London, is you were involved with getting an Eagle Scout to do something.
Oh yes.
And a bridge or so, I don't remember. But there was a meeting, I don't know if it even really happened, but there was the discussion of, well, if we get this started with this Eagle Scout, how can we capitalize it? And then your conclusion was, we can't capitalize on it really, but it's good for the town, so we'll do it.
Yeah, yeah, I know the project you're referring to. And I actually don't remember what happened with it, but that has been kind of our attitude, is that, if we work to serve the town and we kind of, ignore what's most politically expedient and just in terms of doing what's best, that's going to be the best way to grow. That's kind of the attitude that we've had all along.
Right. That is also one of the things that I would like to shift in the state is I think when, at our state meetings when we say, oh, we need to think of ideas, how can we really focus on outreach? And I think that one of the flaws is that we tend to just focus on, oh, well, we should have, some speaker who is of the Green Party, or, somebody who is directly, who has directly capitalized from the Green Party has become successful. If we just rely on, somebody like that, which I'm not saying that we shouldn't, of course, but I think if we only rely on events in that nature, as opposed to saying, like what you've done with Riverside Park, or any local events that specifically Southeastern Connecticut has done, if we can sort of spread that same sort of action throughout the whole state, I think that not only would it create more prominence, but it would be more effective throughout, because it's saying, oh, well, it's not just a party thing, it's not just a thing to get more votes per se. It's really putting us out there. It's showing also that we care about multiple issues, and we do care about our communities, and we want to be known in ways that are selfless and will help others.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed happened recently, in fact, it might have happened just today, and this is slightly related, is that the Supreme Court of Maine just ruled that ranked choice voting they feel is unconstitutional.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
I didn't notice you heard about that. That happened very recently, and that's, as you know, something that we've been pushing very strongly for in Connecticut, and I think should be implemented nationwide. And I certainly think that if that goes any higher in the court system, it won't hold up, because there is really no constitutional basis to find a different form of voting unconstitutional. But that kind of political constriction and repression of a diversity of political ideas is really kind of the enemy that we are trying to fight. It's not so much an ideology, it's not so much another party, it's a system that reflects a very narrow set of ideas. And that's really what we're out here to challenge.
And in Connecticut, I've been ranting about our ballot design,
Yes.
which really, emulates the old lever machines. And although there's no literal party lever, it's so easy for people to just vote across one row and not look at the names.
Right.
Just think, okay, I'm a Democrat, I'll do row A, I'm a Republican, I'll do row B, and I'm a Green, and I'll do row C, even though row C might only have 4 candidates, and you can vote for up to 7. So I think our ballot doesn't encourage people to learn about the candidates or learn about the issues.
Yeah, I agree. I think our ballots are pretty seriously flawed. The other problem is we don't have random ballots.
Right.
So, I'm always at the bottom whenever I'm running.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, in New London, we're not quite at the bottom, but we're sort of like in the middle of this white space, because the Democratic line in New London is always full, and then the Republican line isn't really quite full, and then the Green line might have 4 candidates, but it's you're getting into a lot of white space there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people aren't really encouraged to look into the white space and vote for the best people, whatever party they're in.
Right.
Well, thankfully this year the Waterford Greens aren't going to have a lot of white space. I believe we have now 7 candidates.
Yeah, we have all of the RTM, I believe, don't we? RTM.
Perhaps not District 1, but certainly
most of them.
2, 3, and 4.
Oh,
We
great.
have candidates.
Board
we have
of
candidate
Appeals,
for
Board of
Board of
Education.
Education, Zoning Board, and some others. So we have a pretty strong slate of candidates.
And you have a convention coming up in a few weeks.
We
Yes,
do.
on June 17th from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Waterford Public Library.
That is our nominating convention.
And we did go through a process where we did, when we were thinking, oh, who can we reach out to? We have to know the different districts that people are from. We wanted to find, people who we knew were reliable, who were genuinely interested in reaching out. We were seeking, of course, specifically for quality. And we know people who would, put in the time and effort and really the true interest and wanted to stand with us.
One thing we've done in Waterford that I encourage, people to do in other green chapters, and really anyone who's interested in getting involved, is we have, made a list of a group of people who are involved in a variety of issues around town. Someone involved in, emergency services issues, water issues, utilities, that kind of thing. And we've sent out, contacted them and said, send us, either come and talk with us at our nominating convention, or, send us an email or some papers, and kind of give us your opinion of this issue, because one thing that we really try to do is be as informed as possible when we write up our platform for a particular election. So our 2017 platform, we really want to make sure is based in the best possible factual evidence. Because if my political ideology was really going to be summed up in one sentence, I would say that it would be, we're going to look at what's most efficient, we're going to look at what works the best, and then we're going to get it done. It's not so much I'm going to do what fits into my worldview. It's going to be what costs people the least amount of money and can be done in the shortest amount of time. We're going to do that.
Absolutely.
You're very results-based. And our convention, we'll probably have 2 nominating conventions this year in New London. And the first one is going to be Wednesday, June 14th at the Fresh Urban Farm on Mercer Street. And that will probably be focused primarily on Board of Education candidates. And then we'll probably have another one in August that focuses more on City Council candidates. And well, we haven't made as many plans as you have yet, except for date and place.
Right.
So, I'm not sure that all the people watching really know what Green Party, views are on different issues. And, before I became a Green, I was a registered Democrat for 30 years, but so often, like, where the Democratic view was not really quite where I was.
Right.
And so when we have, in the press, mostly the Democratic view and the Republicans' view, there's a whole lot that of like void there that
Right.
just isn't being talked about. So I thought it might be helpful if we talk a little bit about where the Green Party is coming from on some issues.
Absolutely.
So I don't know what you want to start, but maybe healthcare, because
Healthcare is always a good place to start.
it's been in the news a lot.
Yes.
We lived through, had the Affordable Care Act,
Yep.
which was originated with Romney Care, actually.
Interesting place to originate.
But it did. I have friends who are physicians. I think they're retired now, but were physicians
Right.
in Massachusetts when the Romney plan came into effect. And they said the one part that was helpful was the expansion of Medicaid, but a lot of the other parts of it weren't really increasing access
Right.
that much. And the Affordable Care Act probably had very similar flaws.
Yes, absolutely it did. The Green Party's stance on healthcare, the view of the Affordable Care Act was, in some ways it's doing a better job. Certainly it's doing a better job of getting people access, but it's not doing a better job for everyone, and it's not doing a better job in the most efficient way possible. It is wasting money, wasting resources, and wasting time at an incredible rate. And of course now, we don't know exactly what's going to come out of the Senate, but whatever does come out of the Senate, it's a safe bet to assume it will be the Affordable Care Act, but more complicated and, worse in terms of efficiency. The Green stance on healthcare is that healthcare is a human right.
Absolutely.
It has to be guaranteed to everyone. But in doing so, the best way to do that is to make sure that it is cost efficient, it is effective, and it is just the simplest possible way to get the job done, and that's national single-payer healthcare system like the rest of the developed world has.
Absolutely. I mean, really just to echo what Baird said, it's a human right, and it's something that I feel like we don't discuss as much as we really should. I think that Greens should have a conversation about it. In your view, what would be the most effective system? How would we really go about it? Because people tend to, refute all of the, they'll find, they'll find.
It isn't free,
solutions.
and no one really thinks
exactly.
it's free.
Exactly.
And I think, and as far as the Green Party goes, and I know it's more general, but one of the things that I really admire is we have a general basis of empathy. So if a man is a Green, there's a 99.9% chance that of course he's going to want to support a woman's right to choose any women's health care, not even if it doesn't directly affect him as a person, but because he can empathize and see, I'm not in this situation, but why should she be?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
it's important to take into account other people's situations, and I think what I really admire as Greens and the common ground that we have is the fact that we do care about the sustainability of others, and even, you know, if other people do have pre-existing conditions that we don't, we still care.
Right.
That's really the main basis of it.
Right.
Well, I think, you know, the idea of the public good, maybe it started with Reagan, maybe before that, but the idea of demonizing everything the government does
Right.
as being negative, but we still drive our cars on public roads. We love the public library. There are a lot of good things. I living in New London, I love like trash pickup.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of public services that I really like, and I did spend one summer of my life living in Oregon at the end of this logging road. No taxes, but like no plowing, no
Right.
post,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
no mail delivery, no electricity, no telephone. And you know what? I really appreciate paying taxes and not having to worry about a lot
Yeah.
of that stuff.
Well, I think that the reason why people do not trust the government, and for the record, I do believe that people should be somewhat suspicious of the government or any,
Sure.
any group that has authority over them. But I think that the reason why people are so suspicious is because they understand that our government is not particularly responsive and that our democracy is pretty sick. I think that if people felt that they truly had control over the government, like we are supposed to in a democratic system, then they would be a lot more willing to trust the government to carry out those services. But because there is that political disconnect, because people don't feel that their views are represented and they don't have a voice, people are understandably very suspicious of anything that the government does.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's also kind of a catch-22 because people are suspicious of the government. Most of the people that I speak with who, you know, have been registered Republicans or Democrats for several years, they say, you know, well, of course I'm in this party because I just am, and it's how I vote, and I don't pay
Right.
attention, and I just
Right.
always follow this. Yet, oh, of course I'm upset with what's going on. Of course,
Yeah.
you know, I feel
Right.
like I don't have a voice. And it's really the catch-22 part of it is they're just sort of trapped in this system and they feel like they can't get out, but they are critical of it. And when speaking to them personally, they do voice their concerns, their opposition. But there's still sort of the stigma and the fear against third parties because, you know, they feel that breaking it will, you know, lead to the other side, i.e., you know, Trump getting elected, or you know, just what's the point if we can't mobilize? So it's really just this vicious trap, and not only has it consumed our democracy, but I feel like it's really manifested, you know, fear into these people, and just the constant like in limbo, you're trapped, you can't get out of it. So it's really upsetting to me more than anything else.
Yeah.
Well, you know, back to healthcare for 1 minute. You know, we do have some public healthcare systems in this country.
We do.
And they're, interestingly, all different models. So we could kind of, you know, check them out and see what works best. There's Medicare, which I'm in the process of applying for. There's Medicaid for low-income citizens. There's TRICARE for the military. There's the VA. We have 4 different public systems that we could pick and choose from, or we could incrementally expand each of them, and it wouldn't turn anything upside down. And, you know, on the responsiveness thing, you know, I wanted to point out, a few weeks ago, we showed the movie, the Noam Chomsky movie, Requiem for the American Dream.
Right.
And one comment he makes near the end is, if this were really a democracy, tax day would be a cause of celebration.
Yes.
Because we would be setting our priorities and
Absolutely.
then figuring out how to implement
Right.
them.
Right.
So we're not celebrating.
No.
So
Yeah, and that's a problem. You know, I mean that's a little optimistic. I don't think anyone's ever going to celebrate Tax Day, but the point is a good one. The point is that people are so resentful of taxes and just the government in general because they understand that they do not have a voice, and that isn't, you know, a lot of people try to make it seem as though those who don't vote are doing so out of laziness, or they're doing so because they just don't care. That's not true. People aren't voting because they don't feel that their vote will truly make a difference between the Democrats and the Republican Party. Whether that's true or not, that kind of depends on the election and the specifics of what you're talking about. But that opinion exists and that feeling persists because our democracy is ailing. And we really need some political diversity if we're going to start fixing it. And we really need the Democratic and Republican parties to start looking at themselves and saying, are we contributing to this problem? Because the answer is yes. If the Green Party was a ruling party, I feel very confident that the Green Party would be able to look at itself because of the way our structure is built and critically examine the ways in which we were contributing to the problem. And I really hope that before 2020 and hopefully before 2018, the Republican, but especially the Democratic Party, can look at itself and find where the problems are and remedy them.
Right, and I would say especially with the Democratic Party, from what I've observed, this past November and afterwards, is a lot of finger pointing and sort of the blame being placed on other causes, but they tend to neglect saying, oh, clearly systematically we had a serious error which caused the Trump win.
Yeah.
So I think that fundamentally is the biggest flaw, and I noticed that, of course, a lot of Democrats are aware of this, and many of them, are the ones who support Bernie Sanders, and they still, they say the Bernie or bust, or I'm not going to vote at all, or some of them did vote Green, or wrote Bernie in, which of course didn't count, but yeah, it's interesting how just seeing the conversation that the Democrats are having, or lack thereof. The ones that are saying, well, we have faith in Bernie Sanders. He's going to be the one that is sort of going to change our mentality. We're going to change the party from within. But systematically and just inherently the way that it's structured, it cannot change because, and I think that's really due to the corporate nature of it. As a whole, if the party is focused on corporate donations, if it's focused on, big banks, and it has these interests that are not inherently the interests of the people, then that's why they're stuck in this conundrum. And it's just been fascinating the past few months, even just as a young voter myself, to see sort of the destruction of this party, where, of course, as a child, I thought, oh, of course, the Democrats are the good party because that's how they present themselves. And it wasn't until I grew older and became a Green and started to think more critically about politics, I said, wow, they're really sort of missing the point here. You can say that you're a progressive. You can say, of course I'm socially progressive. Of course we support, women's rights or reproductive rights. But if the core of it, the way that it's run is through these corporate roots, it's just going to fail. And that is why there's so much resentment, and also just the flaw of not analyzing this well, it's sort of past the point of being able to reform.
And that is the really big difference that the Green Party has with all the other parties, is the lack of taking corporate donations. Well, we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. So maybe you two can talk about how people can get involved, support your campaign, register, whatever, to further some of these things you're talking about.
Well, for people who are in Connecticut in general, try to find and contact your local Green chapter if you're interested in getting involved or in just getting more information. If you want to contact the state chapter, we have a website. You can just look up the Connecticut Green Party. It's right there. And I encourage people to send us an email, get in contact with us, find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and just come to a meeting, talk to us, meet us. There's lots of Greens around the state, and they're always welcoming people to their meetings. In terms of Waterford specifically, we have our nominating convention coming up. I encourage any Waterford resident who is interested to come take a look, perhaps get involved, and even if you're interested in running for office, that'd be wonderful. Come and talk to us. But the best way to do that is just Google.
And one of my goals this year as co-chair, and it has been last year as well, is to really focus on forming coalitions. I really want to sort of not keep ourselves so restricted so that people will think, oh, the Green Party, well, they're minuscule, or oh, they're just an environmental group. I want us to reach out form coalitions with other groups, advocacy groups. I want us to go out there, lobby at the state legislature for bills that are important to us. If you or anybody who's interested feels, I'm part of this nonprofit and I think we would benefit if we partnered, get in contact with us. Or if you even wanted information, because Baird and I had been tabling a couple of the Women's Marches events, and where we have told people who have approached us, we've said, if you're interested in running for office, regardless of what your party line is, you get involved in your local government.
Yeah.
That's really what we enforce as being important. So, if anybody is interested in just running for that, regardless if they're green, independent, et cetera, it's really important to get involved with that. So regardless of your cause or what your interest is, we're always open to communication, and that's really what we want to enforce this year.
So your website is waterfordgreenparty.org?
Waterfordgreenparty.org, yep.
Okay, and New London is nlgreens.org, and an internet search will find us all.
Yes.
Well, we are out of time,
All
so thank you for coming on
Thank
the
you
show.
for having us.
Thank you for having
Yes.
us.
And the next State Central Committee meeting is actually tomorrow
It is.
in Portland, Connecticut. So if people are interested in going, you can get in touch with me. I can give you the details,
Yep.
or the state party website has it.
There you
So
go.
good night and thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank you.
you.